Should you quit dairy or gluten for that matter, or anything that you are really not seeing any reactions to, even though I recommend it in the early phases of the turnaround process? And when I talk about the early phases, I'm really talking about phase 1, 2, and 3 completed. That is like the beginner intermediate state where you still need to exclude some of the things, even though you don't have a reaction to it. And I have so much on my heart that I want to share with you. Please know that I won't force you to do anything. I won't force you to quit anything. I fully respect whatever you choose to do. But I will invite you to receive some information from me about what I have seen over the past 15 years when it comes to these things, and how it can prevent some moms from experiencing really great results with the turnaround process and recovery for their children, and some moms to really not see the greatest results, or for it to take way too long, where we can actually speed up the turnaround process by taking out some of the things and letting go of some of the things that we really can't see any point in letting go of. So I sometimes get the question, should I quit dairy? I know that Ninka sometimes eats cheese and her family too, and so we don't really see any reaction to it. So what's the scientific reason why we should be doing that? I need to know. And so that can become kind of a battlefield, or a topic for conversations that then can become a bit tense, and we want to support every single mom in the most loving way possible. And our finest goal is to get you from where you are at right now with the symptoms that you're seeing in your child and yourself to where you want to be, where your child has more independence, less symptoms, and where you get your life and your freedom and your body back, so that you don't have to worry about the future. Let's just make sure that we are all on the same page with that. So my number one tip for you in the turnaround process, if you want to see massive results, is come as a beginner. Sometimes I get medical doctors, I get psychologists, I get super talented nutritionists and practitioners in my course who has autistic children or want to learn how to help their clients. And it's actually, the more you know, the more difficult it is to actually have a breakthrough within the first 3 months. And that's because when we come with a beginner's mindset, we don't have to unlearn a bunch of things. And when we come with a beginner's mindset, we don't tend to do things the way that we like doing things our own way. And doing things our own way in every understanding and every aspect of the word will not lead you to the results that I want you to see in the turnaround process, because doing it your own way was what led you to us. Doing it your own way was what led to autism. Doing it your own way was what led you to that point of no return, that motivated you to get to that place where you're really willing to let go of all the things that needs to be let go of in order to turn symptoms around. And I always say the autism turnaround process is about getting to that point of no return where you're actually so drained, you're so motivated, you're so on your knees that you're finally ready to let go of the things that you need to let go of to turn autism around. And those things are always big. The things that we need to let go of in order to experience a turnaround are always the things that we don't want to let go of. It's always things that we are super attached to, and it's always things that we can find good reasons to hold on to. I will explain that in a minute. So I have some questions for you that I want you to use to test whether your need to hold on to something, whether it's gluten or dairy or a healer or a practitioner or a religion or whatever it is, whether that is actually a self-sabotage pattern or whether it's actually a good idea or protecting you or benefiting you. So you can test that by asking yourself some questions. Remember though, before we get into the questions, that your brain does not want change. Your inner child does not want change. Your body and your biology does not want change, because in our primal existence, in our primal brain, we have a failure mechanism that is coded to resist any form of change, because change in a wild environment equals danger. And so the more intelligent you are, the more sophisticated these self-sabotage patterns will be. So the brain will try to prevent you from getting the success from the turnaround process that you deserve and that your child deserves. And it will look like perfect excuses or even perfect reasons why. It will look scientific. It will look like it's no problem. And you will have the best arguments for holding on to exactly the thing that will prevent you from getting the results that you want. That's how sophisticated these self-sabotage and failure mechanisms are. So it's not only your brain and your body and your inner child that doesn't want you to change. The dark agenda doesn't want you to change. That autism matrix that's working behind the scenes in the undercurrent in the spiritual realm doesn't want you to change. So when we find ourselves wanting to hold on to things, wanting to do things the way that we have done them successfully previously, know this: the tools that has gotten you to the results that you have now is not going to be the tools that's going to turn autism around, turn the symptoms around. When you want to change things a little bit, you will draw on your experience and the things that's worked for you previously. Just like if you're in your 50s or in your 40s and you've gained a lot of weight, or you've been extremely ill and you want to get healthy, or if you're an autism mom who wants to get healthy, fasting and cardio and starvation and skipping breakfast and putting a lot of stress on the body, the way that we did in our 30s and 20s, where it worked really well, will actually have the opposite effect in this phase of life. Because the more stress we add into the system, the more the body will accumulate fat and get into stress and survival mode. And so it will work against the goal that you have. That's not what we are talking about here, but that's just an example of the fact that what you have done that has worked so far is not going to give you the 10x results. So if you want 10x results and not just a bit of change, you need to do things completely differently. You need to reinvent the world. You need to reinvent your language. You need to reinvent the way that you eat, the way that you think, the way that you address the body and its feedback, the way that you heal. Complete change. So the turnaround process is about learning a new language. It's about being reborn. It's about starting from scratch. And the more you can do that from a clean slate, completely starting from zero, and forgetting everything that you knew before and starting over, the quicker you're actually gonna change. So that one thing that you are holding on to, might be gluten, might be dairy, might be a healer, is that tiny little piece of that stone in the shoe that's slowly irritating you, or that knife that is slowly cutting a hole into that message, that phone line between the divine purpose, God's purpose, your body, your child, and this process that's going to call you up and say, right, this is what we do, this is what we eat, this is what this message, this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you don't do, these people are good for you, these people are bad for you, these foods are good for you, these foods are bad for you. So be really careful with holding on to anything and question everything. So always when you want to hold on to something, or you hear yourself have very strict opinions about something, or you're arguing with the process, always ask yourself, I wonder if this is true. Always, 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 always ask yourself, I wonder if this is true. Because taking out, so there's a reason why we want you to take out the practitioners, the healers, the dairy, the gluten in the first part of the journey, and then we will teach you how to reintroduce it again. So it will be in a completely different way than you're normally used to eating these things, or healing via herbs, or using biomedical interventions or supplements. It doesn't mean that we will never eat dairy. We'll probably never eat gluten, but we will eat cheese at some point. We will eat more sugar at some point. We will use supplements at some point, but we need to get it out of the system and then reintroduce it again. It's the same way we work with the supplements, Most people have just added in a lot of supplements based on protocols and tests and multivitamins and all that. We do it completely differently. We teach you how to understand how to introduce one supplement at the time and how to monitor the responses, and then how to continue or phase out of any intervention, including supplements and food. So we all have our sweet spot for sugar and for dairy and for fats and for exercise. And we want you to become an expert in that. And in order to do that, we need to unlearn and relearn everything. So sometimes in order to find that sweet spot, we got to be really humble and letting go and just leaning into the process, even our resistance and even our scientific background and even all our knowledge. Actually, the more you know that you don't know. That's a good starting point. So even though you don't have visible effects right now, side effects, and you might even only have good effects from eating dairy or eating gluten or going to a specific healer or using a specific biomedical intervention, you don't know what's going on underneath the surface, behind the scenes. You cannot predict the knock-on effects of any intervention or any food. So it might be that your biology is responding against either dairy or gluten. It might be that it's always causing an immune response, and we don't know if that immune triggering response is going to cause you to lose your hair in 1 year or 2 years or 10 years. It's going to cause diabetes in 8 years, or it's going to cause eczema and allergies down the line, or that it's going to cause cancer down the line. So any immune triggering food that we just eat because we think that we are not seeing the results yet, that's not a reason why they won't happen down the line. The same thing with the homeopathy or the healing modalities or the spiritual healing modalities. They might, and they often do, work really well in the beginning, but the knock-on effects and the price that we pay down the line is often significant. And that's why let's start from scratch and then reintroducing it slowly. In phase 5, Dr. Berenzi is going to teach you exactly how to determine whether dairy is a problem or not, and how to reintroduce it in a way that's safe and monitored, and so that you can actually start to eat almost everything again and not having to watch your foods and your sugars and your cheeses as much anymore. So we don't know whether there's an addiction going on based on the opioid effects in the casomorphins, the opioids that are in casein, in dairy, and in gluten, proteins in gluten, all have an opioid effect that actually can be addictive without us knowing it. That's also when we start to defend our need to have it, and that's why we can see some children just being super addicted to it. And there might be cross reactions. It might affect your metabolism in a negative way. It might disturb your hormones in an unpredictable way. And then we got to also think about biologically what's natural to us, what's good for us to eat and not. So for example, I have bypassed my threshold, my sweet spot, and I knew exactly where it was for cheese, and I wanted more cheese anyway. And here are the results. These kinds of like cyst-like pimples that you can't pop, they just pop up all over my body when that happens. You might experience discharge even, but this is my signal that I've gone overboard, and then I need a phase of not having any of it. Maybe I can have some sheep or goat's cheese, but you will learn how to determine that sweet spot for you, and then you can decide whether you want to go overboard and ignore that limit like I did this week or not. But we want to get it done right so that you have the right markers for it, and you know exactly when you've gone overboard and how much you can tolerate and if you can tolerate it. I hope that makes sense. The overall takeaway from this is autism is always asking us to let go of who we were to become who we are supposed to be. Autism will always ask us to let go of the things that we are very attached to emotionally or financially or spiritually or physically. And autism will always ask us to change our lives. And it's very often the things that we don't want to let go of and change, that we are being asked to change if we want real results. And you can often see regression or plateaus if we are holding on to our old versions of reality, even if we have regressions and plateaus, and then we automatically go straight for, okay, I got to figure out a biochemical solution for this. I got to find the right practitioner, the right interventions, the right tests, and the right supplements. I need to balance out the biochemistry. No, we cannot forget that this is a holistic 5.5 step process where our mindset, our level of awareness, our nervous system, our environment, the way that we think and behave in the family, our emotional and physical awareness. How healthy are we? How well do we know our body? How connected are we to it? How well do we interpret the language? Do we feel balanced? Are we healthy? Do we know our metabolic type? Do we know how to eat effortlessly? Can we eat almost everything and then switch right back to fat burn the next day? Have we changed the environment that made us sick? And then finally, do we understand methylation, pyrrole disorder, inflammation, PANS, PANDAS, and gut regulation for ourselves? Because that's what we are here to learn and implement so that we can turn symptoms around. I hope that made sense, and I hope that answered a lot of questions. When things get difficult and it's irritating, and I get it, I felt the same way, so frustrated with the things that I had to give up in order to get my son's turnaround. Much love from me.